Alright, welcome to the 4cc Blender tutorials in video form, because for most people it's probably going to be easier following along a video tutorial detailing all the steps as they happen in Blender instead of having to go off a text-based tutorial as an absolute beginner. And ideally I'll have videos on all the most important topics on the Blender tutorials wiki page. But for now, we're starting off with one of the easiest tutorials, which is face masks. And the basic idea of a face mask in PES is you've got a person or a character whose face you want in PES, but there are no source models at all, but you still want to give that player a little bit of personality and aesthetics. So the way it works is you find an image showing the face of that person and you cut out the face and you edit it over a default PES face texture, and then you can use that edited texture for a PES player. So at this point you'll want to be on the Blender tutorials wiki page and in the face mask section, because it's got a link to the face mask template which you should download. It's got the default files for a generic face mask player, and in addition the text tutorial also has an example source image of a person. If you've already got a person or a character in mind, you can probably try finding a source image of your own of that person, since these steps don't really change that much depending on the image you use. So you should be able to follow along just fine making your own face mask. And at this point, also, if you want to read the entire text tutorial, it's in no way required, but it might make following the video tutorial a little bit easier. So with that, we're going to get started. I'm going to be using the source image provided on the page, so at this point you would want to have your own source image ready. So for this tutorial we're going to be using this handsome fellow, and this is a very good source image in that it's relatively higher resolution and the person is facing the camera. You can see the entire face, there's nothing really hidden on either side. We don't really care about the ears, and we can get a clean cut of the entire face and some extra skin to spare. So with that said, the first thing you'll want to do is just copy your image and get it into your image editor of choice. I use GIMP for this, but basically something like Photoshop or Paint.net will work as long as it can handle the DDS file format. So in your image editor, just paste the image in, and we're interested in the face, so what we're going to do is, with the lasso tool or the free select tool, we're going to, along the jawline, just select as much of the face as we possibly can, and we're going to move on with the hairline. Don't get too much hair in there, we don't care about that, we just want the face. And then swap back to the jawline, and that's good. The cut doesn't have to be all that clean. We are probably going to end up erasing most of these bits anyway, but just have a little bit of a buffer here so that you can actually erase that stuff. So now we've got our source face cleanly cut out. So what we want to do now is you downloaded the template on the wiki page, so we're going to locate that, which I have here. I'm going to copy all of the files in here into a working folder. That's basically just a clean folder somewhere, so I don't end up actually editing the template. And this is your default Pez face texture, and this is what we will be transplanting your source face into. So I'm going to open this in GIMP, and I usually don't load mip maps for stuff like this. I don't need the mip maps since we'll be overwriting them anyway. So you've got your Pez face right here. So what we just want to do is go to the original image and copy the face and just paste it over and make a new layer. And it's clearly a bit too big, so what we're going to want to do is resize. I like to drop the opacity to about 30% so I can see where I'm going. And just try to get the eyes and the mouth right. The nose will probably never match, but the nose also doesn't matter all that much. The eyes and the mouth are the important bits. So first of all, the entire thing is a bit too big, so I'm going to scale that down. This should be okay-ish. A bit more. Still a bit more. Alright, that's starting to look decent. I'm going to have to rotate it a little bit to get the eyes right. Yeah, that looks good on the eyes. And then I just need to stretch the mouth down just a little bit and make sure the eyes stay intact a bit more. And honestly, that's going to be good enough for a tutorial purpose. So we've got the source face positioned with the Pez template. So I'm going to bump the opacity back up to 100. And now we can cut these extra bits of skin here, the dark bits and this weird white bit, just to remove them, because we don't really need them. I'm going to bump this up to 50. And I'm just going to try to make it a smooth border here, so we keep the facial details and nothing much more. Yeah, that's going to be good. So now it fits the face, but there's a very clear problem. It is the wrong color. The lighting was obviously very much different than in the default Pez template. So if you've actually done graphical stuff before, you'll probably have a better way for this, but I'm not GD, so what I just do is mess with the sliders. So first of all, let's try lightness doesn't do much. I'm just going to bump it to 10 and drop saturation to -10. Yeah, definitely less brightness, so let's keep that at -20. And -30 is too much. Let's do -20 here as well. And it's, as you can see, it's clearly not a perfect blend, but for tutorial purposes it will do. So now it's sort of blended in, and especially here it's a very good blend, so it's going to be fine. So now we want to blend it even further in, especially here. And at this point, the Pez default I used has a bit of a stubble going on here. Ideally, when you get more used to face masking, you would probably go through the default Pez player face folders and find a player that's got at least the same sort of hair color and facial hair as your source person has. But I just didn't do that for this tutorial, so we're gonna have to deal with the beard. So what I like to do for blending, first of all, I'm going to merge down the pasted layer. So right click and W in GIMP. And then using the healing stamp, so H, I'm going to drop it to 20 again. Using the healing stamp, just select a source in the original Pez texture and start spam clicking through the edges, and it will just blend right in. It will be a bit blurry, but that doesn't really matter because we're only working with bits that don't really have that much detail. So we've got like the sides of the face instead of the actual face details. So every time you get into a new sort of area, you're going to want to probably change your source. I'm not going to change it here because that bit of stubble might be trouble. I'm going to do the beard last, so just keep on spam clicking. Especially the beard will probably just blur up, but that's okay. And finally the chin itself. Alright, this bit's a bit weird, I'm going to keep it. And the blend is, again, not ideal, since the color doesn't perfectly match, but it's okay. So, now that we're happy with our face transplant, we're going to export it and just replace the original face.dds. And for the format, we're going to want DXT5. And since it's a player model, so it's going to be viewed both from near and from far, we're going to want to generate mipmaps. And with that, we're done with the face texture. So this now we get to the part where we actually use Blender in this tutorial, and this is going to be very brief. So first of all, your Blender should be in a usable state, which means that you've gone through the very first bits of the Blender tutorials page and installed the 4cc config and plugin pack. So you should have the importer tools here, and what we're going to want to do is import the face model that was in the Facemasks template. So face high win32.model, just import that face. And it's very clear that it's not a perfect fit from the start. So what we're going to want to do is select face 0 by just clicking on the part that has the face, and then pressing tab, go to edit mode, so we can edit the UV map. And it's clearly misplaced. So again, what we're going to want to do is get the eyes and the mouth right. So I'm going to scale with S, and when you're scaling, you can also lock onto a single axis by pressing either X or Y or Z after pressing S. So I'm going to press X to scale along the X axis and get the eyes right. I'm going to also rotate a little bit with R to match to the black spots, and then just scale with Y again along the Y axis a bit more, and that's going to be good. The nose is actually a decent match, but again, the nose doesn't matter all that much. The eyes and the mouth are perfect, so that's what really matters. And going back to object mode with tab again, it already looks a lot better in Blender, and that's really what we want. And this is all we're going to be doing in Blender for this tutorial. Now that we're happy with how it looks in Blender, and we know that the face UV matches the eyes and the mouth, we can simply just go back to the right and export face, and our face model will be done. And now we've got the face texture, we've got the face model, but we're still missing the hair. And this is where things get a bit different. We're going to go into Pez and recreate this hair model in Pez, because honestly finding hair models on the internet is very hit and miss, so we're just going to use what we have, which is the default PES models. So if you haven't downloaded the pack already, you should go back to Blender Tutorials and the Facemasks bit and grab the PES 17 hairstyles pack, and this has all of the default PES 17 hairstyles. So it's got their models, it's got their textures, and it's got some other bits as well. So you'll want to download this and keep it in a safe space as well. I've got it downloaded somewhere there, and now this is the point where we want to go into PES, because we're going to be recreating Todd's hair in PES so we can pick out the correct files later on. So let PES boot, just spam click through the intro. And once in the main menu, go to Edit, Players, Edit Player, and just find a player you'd like to edit. I usually don't edit the default 4cc players, I just go to Invitational 2 and pick the first one. And then once you've got your player, you go to Appearance and Hairstyle, and it will ask you to reset the player's data. You're going to have to do that in order to get to this screen, and this is where all the magic happens. This is where we're going to recreate the hairstyle we want for our player, and I'll already warn you at this point, it's probably never going to look identical. We're just going to have to settle for good enough. So at this point I'm going to take the Todd and just move it to another screen so I can use it as a reference. You might want to keep it around so you can also see what's going on. And I'm just going to have an educated guess at what the hair might be like. So it's got a bit of curl to it, so I'm going to start off with dry. It's got a bit of length to it. It might be medium or it might be long. I'm going to start off with long, since PES medium tends to be a bit short. It's got a bit of curl, as I said, so I'm going to bump wave up to 2. The style is definitely not up and definitely not combed back, but down looks nothing like it, so I'm just going to compromise and go with up. I think it's parted to the right, and of the two styles I think right 2 is better. Hairline really does not matter at all, so I'm just going to stick to type 1. Forehead, I'm going to keep it as normal. Narrow is maybe a bit too narrow on the left, and wide is definitely not what we're looking for, so I'm just going to keep it as normal. Style, it's not normal, it's not that long at the back, but I think it could be reduced body or even shorter sides. I'm going to keep it as reduced body for now, and what I'm going to do is, it looks close but it's not, it's a bit too flat, so I'm just going to swap between medium and long. Yeah, medium looks a lot better compared to long, which really is a bit flat and a bit too long. So go back to medium, and shorter sides just kills off the sides. That looks dumb. I'm gonna stick with reduced body and just admit that this is probably the closest I'm gonna get. So to keep the tutorial brief, I'm gonna roll with this and keep your face open. And now we go hunting for the correct model files in the pack you downloaded. So I've got it here, and there is a text guide included with the pack. Reading it is recommended, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through all the folders, since that's what this really is. So starting off, you go to Edit Hair Model and you find the model, the folder name that matches your pet's hair. So we're starting off with medium dry. It's also up, and it's parted right too. There we go, and a normal forehead. We don't want the accessories, so we're just going to do this medium, dry, up, parted right too, and normal forehead. So inside is a hair model, so just copy that one and move it to your working folder. Replace the original hair model and just go through all of the folders. We've got edit hair parts, which is very easy. We've got wave 2, and we've got, let me check, reduce body. Wave 2 and reduce body, and this is your main hair texture. This is also very important, so just move it over there and replace. We've got the specular, which is very easy, just wave 2. We've got the shell, which gets a bit more difficult. We've got wave 2. Hairlines type 1. There. We've got a normal forehead. And since cropped is not an option for us, because we're on reduced body, we're just going to use cropped type 1. So wave 2, hairline type 1, normal forehead, and cropped type 1. And replace the original. And we don't need this since we already got the edit hair shell from here. And the specular is once more just based on wave level. And finally there's the MTL. We've got this variety, so just copy paste that one over as well, just to be sure. I'm pretty sure the original hair MTL I had is the exact same, but just to be sure, follow the text guide and just copy paste the MTL as well. And now we've got all the files we need, but the one last problem we're facing is the default pest textures. They are grey, so we're going to have to get the hair color right. So what we just want to do is import both of these into your image editor. Again, no mipmaps. GIMP doesn't like popping to the foreground at all, but we've got the files there. So now we're going to need a bit of Todd's hair color. The lightings are making this side very dark and this side very bright, so I'm just going to compromise and grab a pixel here. And once you've got your hair color picked out, go to the hair texture, and this is a very specific process. So first, it's all detailed in the text guide as well, but I'm doing this from memory. So first of all, what you want to do is right click your layer and add a layer mask, and make sure it's the layers alpha channel and add it, and click the left of these two boxes. Then right click and U to duplicate the layer in GIMP. Make sure the left box is selected again, and then we've got our hair color. So what we want to do is Control and comma, and it will fill it in with the color we've got selected. And then we've sort of lost all of the detail the original hair model had, the hair texture had. So what we're going to try to do is change the layer mode to multiply, and the only thing that's done is made it a bit darker, but that's okay. We wanted it a bit darker anyway, because usually it will turn very reddish for brown hairs, so multiply will fix that. And now we've got the color we want, or at least close to it. So what we're just going to do is I'm going to merge down the layer with W, just to be sure, and just export and replace the original texture and txt5 and generate mipmaps. And the reason I merged down is because by default GIMP's exporter will have this set to selected layer, so it will only export the layer you've got selected. and I always forget to change that, so I just merge down. So overwrite the original texture, and we've got one down, one to go. Take the other texture open, and just repeat the process. So add layer mask, alpha channel, left box, duplicate with U, fill in with control and comma, and set layer mode to multiply. Merge down with W and just export. And again, replace the settings have saved in GIMP, so DXT5, and generate bitmaps. And now we've got the correct hair color in these, and the last thing to do is this hair color. Again, ideally, if you're smart about it and you're used to face masking, you can just go through the PES default player files, if you've got them extracted, and find a model that matches the hairstyle and the facial hair of your source person. That will make it so that you can skip this step, which is probably going to be really annoying. But what we're just going to want to do is, with the magic wand, or the fuzzy select tool as it's called in GIMP, just select the hair, and it's not enough, clearly, so I'm just going to slowly bump up the threshold. Let's go 30. It's better, but still not good enough. Let's go 40. Try a couple of different areas. It's done a bit too much here, but honestly this is workable. So what we're just going to do, we're going to roll with this fuzzy select and just press R for rectangle selection mode, hold Control to subtract from the selection, and just get the bits we don't want to change color out. So that's good enough for that here. And do the same thing here. There you go, good enough. And then holding Shift, we include the bits we actually do want. So the ones that didn't get selected here and here. And with that, we've got most of the bits of hair selected. So what I'm just going to do is, I'm going to right click and press N for a new layer, accept the default values, and again Control and comma, just fill it in. And it will look bad at first, but what we're going to do is we're going to drop the opacity to about 60%. That preserves some of the detail but still gives you a different hair color. I'm going to try 70. Yeah, 70 is okay, it still keeps enough of the detail for me. So we've got the hair colored, but there's this bit which is a bit annoying, so I'm just going to use the cloning stamp with C and then select an area and just alright, well I'm going to merge down first then. There we go. Just paint over that area, and there's also a weird spot here, so I'm just going to paint over that one as well. With the loss of detail we had from just dumping a paint bucket over this, the cloning stamp looks okay. Usually if it doesn't look natural, what you'll want to do is use the healing tool and just spam click over that. I'm not going to do that, I'm happy with the result. And the last thing we need to do is fix this absolutely abhorrent blending here. So again, healing stamp, and I'm going to select the source as the face and just blur it. Sometimes when there's not bits like this, you might be able to use the blur or the smudge tool in GIMP or Photoshop, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the healing stamp like I always do, and just try to blend the hard edges in. This part's going to be annoying because it's got the ear and we want to preserve that detail, but it's going fine. I'm going to change the source now that we're getting towards the neck area. and just try to make it look at least somewhat natural. It's not going to matter too much in pairs because most of this will be covered by the hair model, but just to be sure. That's a bit overdone, but I'm just gonna keep it. Ideally you just want to go along the edges and not care too much about the actual face texture. I'm going to swap with the source again since we're getting close to the neck. And at 100% zoom it looks decent. So that's going to do for a tutorial. And again, just export and replace the original. And now we've got all our parts done. We've got the face with the correct hair color, we've got the hair textures with the correct hair color, we've got the correct hair model file, and we've got the speculars. So what I'm going to do now is go to Blender, Control and N, and click Reload Startup File. It will give you a clean slate to work on, and just import the face model again like we did before, but this time we are also going to import hair. And this sometimes happens. It can't import all of the default PES hair models. That's okay. This was only going to be a preview anyway. And we can already see that there's some grey bits left over here. Ideally, that would not happen, but we used multiply as the layer mode, so that just ended up happening. So when working with actual face masks instead of a brief tutorial, you'll probably want to erase most of this in your image editor, sacrificing some of the edges of the texture. I'm not going to spend any time on that. I'm just going to call it good. So now we are basically ready to get this into PES. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of the files in my working folder, and I'm going to use the aesthetics compiler. I've already got a meme team export set up for testing. I'm just going to replace an existing player since I've got those files backed up somewhere. And with that we're just going to build the aesthetics export. And you'll want to close PES at this point to make sure the CPK this thing builds will make it where it should. Just let it build. And we've got our face mask in PES. So all that's left is checking out how it looks in game. So let PES boot up again. Spam through the intro. And you could test the player in exhib mode in a normal match, but what I like to do is just go to edit again, go to players, edit player, and my team is in Invitational 1, this is my testbed, and it's player 2. And from the appearance, honestly the hair is a bit too dark. Clearly it's almost black, and you can really see the extra grey bits, which in a proper model that's actually got effort put into it, you would be able to just erase those. But the face mask itself, it looks good. This is like, for what, half an hour of work, this is probably what you're going to end up with. It's not a perfect blend, it's a bit too bright for the surrounding bits, but the facial features are really easy to distinguish. You can see that it's Todd. And this is honestly, this is a very easy way to give your player at least a little bit of individuality some basic aesthetics, even if there are no source models. And another fun bit about the face mask is that since it's a default PES face model, if you look closely you can see that the mouth is moving and the eyes are blinking, so it keeps the facial animations and your player is capable of emotion. So for example in a goal celebration you can clearly see the mouth opening. And this is, in my opinion, it just gives your player a bit of character, being able to express emotions. And again from this angle you can see that especially on the left Todd's face is a bit too bright. But again, in a proper face mask that has more than 30 minutes of work put into it, it's just very easy to go back and just blend it in a little bit better. But that's going to do it for this tutorial, and hopefully there will be more of the sort in the future.